Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we normally talk about Python and Django, but we're going to continue on an exploration of the Go standard library. We started this last stream. I'm doing a presentation at the end of this month for a local meetup, and I'm going to figure out how much can you do with just the Go standard library. So we built out a repository, we got the Go stuff set up, everything for local development, and then we explored Go's built-in routing functionality. And tonight we're going to continue on some of that stuff. So that's our plan for this evening. So you're welcome to ask me questions about web development. It's going to be more themed around Go this time. So that should be an interesting exploration. I'm going to try and use a sticky again, like I did last time. I was unsuccessful because it kept hiding. I wanted something bigger. So I think I figured it out though. If you select it, you can put it always on top, which was what I was really wanting for. Float on top. There we go. That way we can keep our notes about what we're doing. Because I'm kind of constrained on real estate here. So the first thing that we're going to do is look at JSON serialization. So, and let me actually make the font bigger. Font. Baseline. How do you make the size? Okay, you can command plus it. JSON serialization. Do command plus. Oh, that's after the fact. And plus. There we go. Okay, cool. So I've got this list over on the side of what we talked about last time and what we can continue on. So, but primarily though, I want to like focus on how can we be productive. So that's JSON serialization for APIs, which would be what you might commonly use Go for. It's going to be really good at that. Go does have an HTML template library, but I don't know how extensive it is. So that's going to be one thing. Some of the other stuff that's on there, I was just kind of exploring the different topics that are potentially available. I don't know how much we'll get into those. So I'm going to focus on these. Maybe if we knock them out quickly, that we can get into some of the other ones. I did discover last time, to my surprise, is that it seems like there's not great built-in data options for managing your data, and primarily I'm thinking about like a relational kind of database. So unlike Python, for example, which has SQLite built into it, there's not even something that comes with that. So if we're truly sticking with the standard library, then we're going to run into some trouble pretty early on how to actually work with extensive data, short of dealing with a bunch of files on disk. And while you could deal with files on disk, that's probably not what you want to do, would be my guess. Also, I guess the other kind of API you could do is you could proxy. So you could have a Go service that's serving up a JSON API, and really maybe what it's doing under the covers is issuing HTTP requests with the HTTP client that Go has, and that could get you pretty far. But probably not. I don't know. If you're thinking about building an app, this is not where the things that come to mind. So let's first focus on the standard library JSON stuff, and then we'll see which of these other pieces we might want to explore. So we have our app file, which has been really simple. This is what we looked at last time. There's not a lot of complexity here. I think what we want to be able to do is maybe pull out some of these functions in the future so we don't have everything in line. I'm not hyper concerned about structuring this app here. It's more of an exploration of features, but you never know, you might want some code cleanup here that would be beneficial. So let's do this. Let's first explore the JSON module. Oops, that's JSON RPC. Let me move the sticky note down enough so I can see at least the tab titles. And let's look for JSON. Well, I know there exists a JSON serialization thing, but I don't know necessarily where it is. So try searching JSON. Man, that sticky note's going to get cumbersome, isn't it? JSON. I think once we've got some documentation, we can actually find it pretty quickly. It's under encoding. Okay. So I'm pretty sure that Go will do some default JSON for you. So if you have the common thing that you'll reach for in Go, like many typed languages like C, is something called a struct. So let's, I guess we need to probably have some kind of thing that we care about, or thing that we want to present for us to have a coherent set of examples. I'm going to be not very creative and use something that is commonly used, which would be like movies and that sort of stuff. So let's try that and see what we can come up with. So if we start just by saying, let's make a struct, and it's going to be, I'm sorry, I'm doing this wrong. Type struct, nope, Matt, come on. Type movie. It is a struct. There we go. So that's how you say what you're about to make. You're going to make a type of a movie. It's going to be a struct. It's going to have certain attributes, and we want certain fields to be in it. Maybe like most notably, we would have like title as a field. So it goes, you can go field and then your type that you want with that. We want that to be a string, and then let's say we'd want maybe like, just to give us some other data that we can see for JSON serialization. Let's say release year as an integer, and then just to have one more bit of stuff. Well, actually, maybe we can do something nested in a moment. So let's start with just these two fields. We'll see if we get some JSON serialization, and then we can add like a director or something like that. We can make a person type or just something. And just so we can see something nested and see how this all would work. So let's start there, as this is the structure that we want to run with. Now, I think the default serialization would match to like the field names that you have here. So if you're working with JavaScript or something like that, this might not be the most friendly thing, because what's the JavaScript developer going to think? They're going to generally want their stuff to be in like camel case, right? So they'd probably want like release year. And if you're sending them to the serialized payload as release year for the key that shows up, they might be like, what is this? This is like goofy capitalization case. And this case stuff, it has to do with Go and how it deals with public versus private data. So if you don't capitalize these attributes, they're basically not considered exported. So if you had, maybe if you put this movie struct in, say, a different file or a different package, and you called it like a models package or something like that. If you don't have these attributes available, then you really can't construct something with like a publicly call them. It's going to give you, it's going to complain about that stuff. So let's start with an endpoint that we'll just add to the bottom. We'll just keep adding to our little router here, and we will do. What should we do? Let's just call it movies, maybe? Like it'll be like a list endpoint, okay? So let's do router. We want a handle func, and we want to have a route that we'll call movies. So that'll be kind of you just do a get on it, and in fact, we can even be explicit about that and say it's going to only work with get. Although we could do this so that it works with post in the future, and then we'll have a function here that we're going to, for the moment, continue to have inline. Maybe we will refactor that out and put it somewhere else in a little bit. But what we want to have is some kind of list of movies that we could build. So in fact, let's make that. Let's put right in. Is it keep? No, put it. Oh, append here. Oh, that's a single line. Ha ha ha. I see. My editor is a little bit smaller here, so it's actually wrapping. So it's like I was getting very confused. So let's go to append here, and we're gonna now insert our movies, which will be a variable of which can be an array of movies. And oh man, my immediate brain the syntax for this is eluding me. Is it like this? And then I think we would do like nest. You can essentially make an instance right in here, right in line. So title, and then we'll do what's a good movie. Man, what's a good movie? Shawshank. The Shawshank. I'm gonna spell it wrong. Gosh, okay. I can't do this whole stream and then spell that movie title wrong. Shawshank. Oh, it is Shawshank. I was spelling it right. Cool. Shawshank Redemption. Great film. So if we do this, now we have an array of movies with it's got a length of 1, right? And we want to essentially write that response out. So we want to use the writer, I think, to serialize the data, the movie's data out as JSON. That's where we get our encoder. Now, I think I mentioned this last time. I mess around with Go plenty at work, but it's pretty well formed already for my use case. So I think what we need to do here is get the documentation up and see what the official style is, or actually, you know, let's ask ChatGPT to give us an example. So please show how to use JSON, the JSON package with a handle func from a mux. See what it does there. So I think what it will show is some kind of example. They're doing a person. And getting down here, the ChatGPT is doing a person. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you can make a new encoder. So we want to be encoding the data. Like we have the data in memory, and encoding it is the process of turning it into bytes that go out on the network. So that's encoding. That's the direction. So I think the way this is working, let's verify by looking at the package and reading documentation. I was really coming here to see how this would work. Because what I don't know about this is like, how do you work with this response writer to set like response code? Does it automatically do that? All of those things are kind of unknown to me of how you'd make this API if you had to deal with errors and that sort of stuff. But this looks like a promising start. Let's take a look here and see what we can see. So there are also maybe some other APIs on this. With Marshall is another name for essentially encoding. So that's maybe a quicker way to do this than using a new encoder. So I want to understand why do they have an encoder and a marshaller? That's something worth exploring here. Let's start with, let's just go down the list and start with Marshall and figure out what it's talking about. So Marshall returns the JSON encoding of v any. Marshall reverse, and it returns either a byte array or an error. We're not going to worry about errors so much in this stream. You really should worry about your errors, but I'm not going to. So the question is, if we've got an example like this that's using Marshall that takes an input object, where is it marshalling to? Oh, I guess it returns the byte array directly. So maybe that's why they didn't want to do this, because let's see if we can find an example. They have some examples in the documentation that you can read pretty easily. That's a good thing to have. So it's calling Marshall on a group here. It's a group object. So you're left with the bytes afterwards, and then it's writing to the standard out file stream. And then you would see, in fact, notice they didn't do any kind. So this is what I expected to see, is like we have attribute names that are going to match with the struct there. And we'll see how we can change that in a little bit. But first, let's figure out if the cleanest way to do this. So one style is you get the bytes back from Marshall, and then we could probably call w.write, but maybe that's not what they were trying to say. That's not what ChatGPT was trying to do. Is they're trying to show perhaps a lower level style that kind of wraps up your writer. And I don't actually know what is preferable in the Go community. in fact, let's see if ChatGPT has any context here that might be able to answer this. Why use new encoder instead of Marshall? Marshall has one L, right? I think it does. I always spell it wrong. Yep, one L. What is more prevalent in the Go community? All right, so we have a response writer, and I'm sure it adheres to the IO writer interface, which is why we have writer. In fact, they give us this example of HTTP response writer being a writer. So we know that. And let's see, looking up here, when we want the bytes, if we want to manipulate it or store it in a variable or send it to a file, okay. But I guess you could also do all the same stuff. Seems like it's possible. Maybe not the manipulation part. Maybe that's important. So if you're like wanting to manipulate the raw bytes, maybe you would marshal it and then fiddle with the data. Seems like a really bad idea, to be honest. But that's good to know. Why use new encoder? It works directly on the response writer. This avoids the okay. This is also maybe okay. They point out it might be an optimization, but it maybe doesn't matter. Eliminates the need to check the length of the byte slice. Oh, interesting. So there's a whole like aspect here that wasn't even noticing. Did they give an example? They didn't give an example with Marshall. So perhaps in the documentation, does it say you have to check if there's a partial write? That's probably in those error conditions. Maybe the new encoder handles some errors for you that you're not otherwise handling. So, okay, let's try this out. Let's do. We want to do JSON. Well, let's do, what would this be? I guess we'd have an encoder. So we would get an encoder, and that would be JSON. So we want to bring in the JSON library, and we want to say new encoder, and we're going to take the response writer, and then we want to do encoder.encode movies. Okay. So if we do that, then we do go run on our app so far, which gets our little server going. And at this point, what port did we put that on? We put it on 8080. So we should be able to go over to curl and curl HTTP localhost 8080. Just check that we got one of these right. So users Matt. Hello Matt. Okay. Cool. Now let's try our new movies endpoint. See what it looks like. Okay. We didn't. Oh, I see. We did not set release here. That was dumb of me. So let's do that. Does anybody know? Is that like 94, 93? Shawshank 94. All right. My memory's either I saw that at the corner of my eye when I was searching for it earlier, or my memory's actually not so bad on that. So the other thing we want to put in here is release year and say 1994. And if we do this again, I want to figure out, maybe there's a way to get it to like rebuild on code changes. I don't know if that's actually, let's see, go help run. Can it detect any like changes? There might be a tool. Again, the spirit of this is we want to use the standard library. I want to say there is a tool that will watch for file changes that like it's not built into go build or go run. So we won't be able to take advantage of that, but I'm pretty sure, like I said, I think you can go find that. So we'll have to go through this cycle over and over again of stopping and starting. That's okay. So if we do this, and we can do movies. Now we see it's serialized out. We have a list because it was an array in our payload, or in the actual function here. We've got an array, and so the array is of type movie, and then we use the curly braces to say, like, this is what we're going to put into the array. And then essentially, actually, you could do something like this, where you could do movie. So this is might be a little funky to read if you've never seen Go syntax before. So let's like space this out in a way that might make this a little bit more clear. So the curly braces are the constructor effectively for the array, where you can populate it with an initial set of data. The other way to do this was you could probably make, not probably, you could make an empty array like this by declaring it with var, and then from there we could be appending instances on. So we could do movies equal append movies. You have to give it the same thing, and then you would create a movie instance here where we would do the title and all that sort of stuff. That, for our purposes, that's going to be overkill. Akil, hi, welcome. We're working on some Golang stuff tonight, exploring the standard library. So instead of doing that, we're just going to continue the path that we have. Thanks for subscribing, Emmanuel. And notice that, like, here I've got movie, like it's an array of movies, and so that type is known. And then I listed it again here. So you're saying like a movie, and then you're like constructing a specific movie instance. But Go is smart enough to say, like, hey, the only type that can go in here is movies, so we don't need to say that twice. So you can just list it out kind of like this nested creation syntax here, which is maybe a little counterintuitive. So let's see, we've got Shawshank Redemption. We can say, let's put a second movie in here. Usual Suspects, that's a good one. What was that? What year did that come out in? Let's see. The Usual, 95. All right, some good years, good movies those years. Mid-90s. I think one of those years, like 95, had some, like, I think it was 95, had just like killer set of movies that came out. Go check them out and be like, whoa, I can't believe all these came out like in the same month. I think it was 95. Anyway, so now we've got a couple pieces of data in here. We'll run the app again, and we'll hit our endpoint again. And we'll see that there's now 2 objects in here, and they've got title and release here. All right, that's cool. But like I said, if you've got JavaScript teammates that you're working with, or you're just making an API that you want to be friendly, people are going to be like, ew, what is this capital K stuff? So this is where Go gets a little, I don't know how I feel about this. I think it's called, I think they're called tags, is what I think it is referred to as. Let's see. Essentially, you can add this extra, like, this extra metadata, struct field tags, to essentially rename what you want. So here we've got the field is named field, and it's an integer, but when it comes out as the serialized format, it's going to be called my name. And there's extra little tags you can do here, like this omit empty thing. So if you don't give any kind of value at all, it just won't include it. And then I think there are maybe other tags here. Or you can put it out as a different type. So if you have an integer and you want it to come out as a string, serialize in a different way that way. So that's interesting. So for our purposes here, we want to say this is a JSON thing, and we want it to be called, I don't know why my formatter did that weird thing. We want it to be called title, like so. And then we want this other one is also a JSON, and we want it to be called release year in camel case style. So if we do that and then start the server again, we should at this point see something a little friendlier for JavaScript people and folks that like to use APIs. And you could probably use snake case if you wanted to. If like that, if that's your thing, your style, you could do that. Whatever style you want. Kebab case. Oh, I'm working with at work. I'm working with a vendor. I won't dunk on the vendor's name directly, but they use I don't even know what I'd call it. You know, like there's a bunch of things you could have. You could have let's do it in the editor so it doesn't yell at me. So you've got Pascal case, which is like what these properties are. So that's where you have a capital letter. You've got camel case. You've got snake case. There's this one I think is called kebab case. I never know how to spell kebab. Kebab case, where you use a dash. And there are constant case, like where you have all caps, that sort of stuff. But the one that I've saw from this vendor is they wouldn't even have a name for it. So let's just like pick release year. They would literally do it like release year and just ram the words together with no separators, no indication that there's like just one big mega word. It's pretty weird, especially because release years, like that one's not too bad, but some of these things that they ram together are like, you know, the release, I don't know. I'm gonna just ham it up. The best and greatest release year, something like absurd stuff where it's like, what are you all doing? So don't do this, please. Don't make an API. Like, pick a style. Camel case is pretty decent for APIs. I wouldn't fault you if you did snake case, especially if you're like coming from Python and you're just using the default serialization there and you're not trying to manipulate anything. But please, none of this. None of this. All right. Anyway, so what do we have? We've got some code that now can take structures and arrays, and it can serialize them out to be encodings, or be encoded as data. You know, I honestly don't know what will happen. So the other like common type that you would think of, I mean, if you're thinking of like comparing this to Python, you have scalars like integers, int or stir, and you have your common list, and you have your dictionary, right? And then I guess you also have set, right? And the scalar types are similarly named in Go. The list type here is actually referred to as an array, I believe. And then you can also have maps, and maps work. The declaration for a map looks something like, I think you use the word map, and then you say, there we go. The key goes in the inside of the square braces, and then the type. So if you wanted to have a map of movies by title, I don't know, you'd put like string and then movie, something like that. So you could do a map. So if you did a map, I don't know how that would serialize. In fact, let's check it out. The whole point of this is to explore, right? So let's make a map and see what happens when we encode that. So we want to have, where do we want to put it? Instead of doing our array, let's switch this. We'll make our movies as a map. So it's going to be map of, like I said, string and movie. And then I think we can construct it this way. Yeah. So then we're going to get our key. Might be off on how to build this properly. We'll try it. And then I'm not going to put all that information again. So let's just try and keep it dumb and simple. Is it a colon? I could be getting this wrong, y'all. So bear with me in case it just is not right. Title, a movie, and then release year 2024, and let's do one more where we have B, and then we'll say B movie 2025. Why not? Okay, so I have no idea how this is going to come out. Like, is this, and the biggest thing here is like, I have a feeling I know how it's going to come out, but what I don't know, and maybe we won't be able to see it with two variables, is the order consistent? And I think it's not. So we'll actually go to ChatGPT here in a minute and ask the question, but it's worth seeing it and see if we can just get evidence of it. So let's try. We've got A. I mean, at least in this short data, it might be consistent. That doesn't mean, that doesn't no guarantee that over a long set that you're going to be guaranteed that ordering necessarily. So let's ask. When serializing a map, or let's put it in Go terms. When JSON encoding a map, is the key sort order guaranteed to be the same? No. Okay. That's good. It's good to go into that with clarity. Akil, you're totally welcome to ask me a question. We're just kind of messing around tonight, playing with some different Go stuff. So if you have a question, fire away. All right, so they show an example of ZAB, and order output is not guaranteed. And I think this has to do with hashing is hard to like guarantee ordering necessarily. Like, it's not actually common for a language to, because effectively a map is a hash map. It's backed by a hashing algorithm. So the way that it accesses the data and iterates through the keys is not necessarily guaranteed to come back in the same order. But some languages have, like Python, for example, as of, I don't know which version of Python actually, but recent versions of Python will actually guarantee that the order that you add things to a dictionary will be the same as when you put them in. So if you want to serialize out, it would always be the same. All right, Akil, I'm looking at your question here. So you learn JavaScript, then Python, cool. And you know the concepts. When you try to build a project, always forget and struggle to combine them. Do me a favor and say what DSA is. I'm not actually familiar with that term. So can't help you too much on there until I have an understanding of what the heck DSA means. Just from a learning concept, it is challenging to build a project. But I do think that I think you're, like, short of knowing what DSA was. Oh, data structures and algorithms. Okay. Depends on what you want to do, of course, and who you're trying to interview with. But and take this with a grain of salt, because I did study computer science in school. But don't think that like data structures and algorithms is all they're cracked up to be in terms of needing to know that. Like, in my day-to-day work, I'm not leaning on like some kind of sorting out. I'm not writing a lot of binary trees, I tend to lean on whatever's built already and leaning on an ecosystem. That's not to say that understanding those things is a bad thing. But for someone who wants to learn effectively, I think building projects is a great path. And I think that you've kind of hit on it. It's like you forget and struggle to combine them. I think that's okay. And I think that's okay as long as you are building a project that you care about. Because like, backing up a little bit, I am a local organizer for some tech meetups here in town. And I run various workshops and talk to people at all stages of their career or their learning journey with software development. And I've talked to many beginners. And the consistent piece of advice that I try to give people is build a project when you're trying to learn. And the reason for that is you can definitely go down the academic route. And that can be productive. But the problem that I feel that's with the academic route is that when it gets hard and all you're doing is learning it for academic purposes, you're more likely to say, you know what, forget it. It's not worth it. So contrast that with actually building a project. If you're building a project that you actually care about, something you want to exist in the world, and maybe you don't know how to do everything, in that universe, when you get stuck with something that you haven't figured out, you're more likely to push through, because it's not just the learning that is your goal. You actually have two goals. You have the goal to learn, but also to make this thing. And you know that if you stop the learning, you're not going to get the thing. You're not going to build the thing that you want to exist in the universe. So from that perspective, I say, work on a project, push through the pain, like make sure that the project is meaningful enough that you care about seeing it through to completion. Maybe that means build something for a family member and like be a little bit accountable there. That could be a way to go. But yeah, having projects like that, I think will help you to get over that hurdle of I don't quite get it. And yeah, it's going to be hard. There's some repetition that has to happen, and you got to get your fingers going through it a few times before stuff starts clicking. Hopefully that helps answer your question a little bit. Ashutosh, let me look at your question here. So, could I highlight a step-by-step roadmap to master Django? Wow, that's quite a list that you've got there. So you've got, you're welcome, Akil. You've listed like URL mapping, middleware, database, and then you jump to distributed systems. Okay, so I was with you until you got to distributed systems. Django is great. I don't think distributed system, especially if you're just trying to learn web development stuff, distributed system theory is that's like step 20 on your journey. Like don't do that. But you can learn a ton through various forms. It depends on how you like to learn. Again, my advice about building a project remains the same. Maybe you like to have a ride along that you want something to read. So there's a couple of, one of them I will plug selfishly, but I'll start with the non-selfish plug. So there's always the Django project itself has good documentation. If you start right with this getting started button, there it is right here. Try the very first sentence, try a tutorial. The tutorial will walk you through building a Django app that's very, it is structured to the point where you can follow step by step. You should be able to follow step by step and walk away with a functioning app. It won't be the most beautiful app, but it'll walk you through the concepts that are paramount to understanding core elements of Django. Now, my criticism of the Django tutorial is that after you get the project going, it starts with like a bunch down at the, well, maybe they're not. Okay, maybe they've improved some of aspects of it. Let me scan through this for a minute. It's not long before you already get into like creating models and database stuff. And I don't know, if you haven't done a lot of software development before, I find that is starting at the bottom. So there's like two major approaches I would see with like learning. One is and your preference will vary on like what you want to go after. One is the approach of saying, let me start and learn all the pieces at the bottom and then build up to the next conceptual thing. And let me learn the pieces at that layer and then build up and then build up. And eventually like you form the pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid is your whole app. And you've like learned everything from down underneath it. Okay, that's one way to go. Another way to go is saying, I want to make an app. That's where I'm starting. Like that's my starting point, is at the top of the pyramid. I don't know all these pieces below, but I know I want to make an app. How do I do that? And you go down from that layer and say like, well, what's the first thing I need to build? Is like, I need to have like, it needs to be accessible in my browser, and I need to be able to go to a web page and see something. Like, I don't care what, I just need to see like a little, the classic hello world that you would get from a programming assignment. Can I see a web page that shows me hello world, not backed by any data, literally just writing it out onto the screen. And I don't know if you could tell from the way I'm expressing myself, but I definitely have a style preference between those two. I would much rather like see the thing and then progressively learn layers and layers and layers. And for me, in that pyramid of stuff, like the database stuff is kind of down towards the bottom of the stack, honestly. Like how you are storing data for like permanent storage is a concept you don't need right away, especially if you have like static content. You could make a website that stays at the top that is just all like hard-coded HTML pages and serve it through Django and never touch the database, and you'd be fine. So from my perspective, starting you at the database at the lower layer is maybe setting a certain foundation, but is also overwhelming you with concepts that you don't necessarily need to know right away. Okay, so that being said, now I'm going to get to the self-serving aspect here. Hopefully y'all tolerate me a little bit. I have a book that you can read online for free. So this is why like I don't feel bad plugging it. Although if you want to buy my book, please, that would be awesome. So my book is called Understand Django, and it's not formatting well on this. And well, there's something to fix. It is all available online. So you can read about what the table of contents is and then see all this stuff. And my philosophy for structuring the book is to start from that top point. Say like, you want to build an app, you need to understand how the browsers work, and then you need to understand how URLs work and what do the URLs connect to in the Django code, and how does that connect to HTML code, and then like going down the list. I keep getting lower and lower. And that's how I approach it. And by the time you get to the later chapters in there, you're getting into some more advanced stuff. But you've already built a very solid kernel of knowledge on this, so that it's not so overwhelming anymore, because like your foundation's pretty good because you have started from the abstract and you're slowly getting lower and lower to the implementation details. So that's my thinking on how to go into learning. You can use my book for free. You can buy a copy if you want a print copy, or if you want an EPUB or something like that. That's cool too. You don't have to use my stuff at all. There's tons of other resources out there that are also powerful. And like I said, I started you with the Polls app on the Django project. Both are good ways to learn. Okay, Ashutosh, I'm seeing your other comment here. Yeah, I do comment. So my book does cover some stuff like reverse proxy. If you want to jump around and look at the deployment chapter, you can get an understanding of how reverse proxies work. I don't go into the hardcore depth of them. So you're not going to see like, here's how you configure Nginx, and here's how you hook it up to Django. That's not going to be covered. But the conceptual building blocks we put in place, and I think it links out to the various tools that you might want to use. So maybe there's a good path there. All right, so let's return to GoLand for a little bit and see what else we can see. So we've now seen serialization of a map. We have learned from ChatGPT at least, and it's very believable. I don't have any reason to doubt what they're saying. It tracks to my understanding of how many languages work, that a map is unlikely to be in a guaranteed order. So if you need it to be in a certain order, well, tough noogies. And then you've got the array of movie stuff that will show up that way. So I think we can kind of check, in my opinion, we can sort of check JSON serialization off the list. What we haven't seen is how do you get that struct to begin with? So that is an interesting problem, which we will maybe get to as we get to data storage. But again, we're trying to just like I said with that other structure of how do I view things, like here's how you can go down in conceptual levels. We're starting at the high stuff of making an app and then going to different routes. And then we'll see how would we build this in other ways. But before we do that, let's look at what are the other options we've got here. So let's return to our README. I'm going to say we check off this box. And we've got HTML templates. So let's look at where this is. Let's get rid of a bunch of these other things that we had opened up, because there are too many. Oh, I forgot about, did these still work? Yeah, there it is. Okay. Forgot we had, it's like, did a bunch of silly gestures. So yeah, we got JSON stuff. No, there it goes. All right, cool. I'm ridiculous. Sorry. Okay, so we want templating, and let's see, template. Where are you? All right, HTML template. Oh, there's also text template. Ooh, what's the difference? Let's ask. Let's check with ChatGPT, see what it says. What is the difference between HTML template and text template in the standard library? General purpose, well, no kidding. Plain text, markdown, fine. The HTML one, oh, okay. It's got extra layers on stuff. So maybe the text template's simpler, perhaps, but HTML is probably what we want for certain, saving us from certain common security things like cross-site scripting. All right. And here's an example. Auto escaping, turning those into HTML safe things. Cool. So we're talking about building HTTP apps with just the Go standard library. So I think we'd want to reach for HTML templates. That feels like the definite right choice. So what are some attributes that we care about? I listed them up above there. Let's put them here, just so we can close that README. Can we do any sort of nesting? And then is there any notion of like a partial fragment that we can add? I think there are. Another name might be an include if you're coming from like PHP or something like that. So if we do that, yeah, delete those, close this README. All right, cool. And for the moment, let's go ahead and commit this, say explore JSON. And I've got this repo up and available. So if you want to play along, you can. It's is this gonna work? Nope. Hub open. Oh, I don't have either of those on. Jeez. Okay. Never mind. So the repo is at https://github. Actually, I think I can probably do this. Open github.com mblayman, then go standard app. There we go. So you feel free to clone that, try it out. I didn't put a README in there that talks about how to run it, but as you've been seeing here, and as I can throw in the README for future viewers, run go run app.go, and then I'll say stop with Control C. Okay. So that's how we can run this stuff. Return to the app and see what else we got. We want to see templates. Well, I need to figure out, do you have to like load templates from files? Do you have to, maybe we can start with like perhaps like the simplest thing might be just make a template string in this file and load it that way. That way we don't have to deal with file IO. I don't think it's a bad thing to deal with files, but maybe they even make it easy. I'm not sure. So let's see. Let's take a look. We've got Data-driven templates. There's another way of saying rendering stuff, I think. They're safe against code injection. Focuses on security. Great. This package wraps text template, so you can share its template API to parse and execute HTML safely. Why do we have to give it a name? That's interesting. We might have to back up and read text template to understand a little bit of why they're called, why they're named. Is it like a registry that if we create a template that we can recall it? Don't know. Because maybe it might do some like for context. Like why would you give it a name? So there's multiple ways to do template rendering. I don't know if you've ever explored this. So one version would be like do some regular expressions and like look for placeholder things and just from those regular expressions fill in the values of stuff. I'm not saying that very well, especially if you haven't used regular expressions. But that's like a very primitive form of making templates. And then what you would essentially be doing is like almost like a gigantic format string. You would have these placeholder fields, and the format string would add things into your formatted string, and you'd get your output format. That's one way. I don't think that's a very common way, especially for templating libraries. Commonly, I think what happens is one of two different modes. One mode is the template is parsed, but it's parsed and like runs afresh each time. Like there's a template engine that knows how to read the bytes of a template each time and goes through that and fills in the different spots that are the different for loops and if statements and all that stuff, and does the evaluation like at that runtime against that template, almost like an interpreter on a template language. Another mode is to parse a template completely and go through the full set of just like you would treat a programming language, where you take each section of it and you put it through some kind of tokenizer or lexer, and you break it up into its different little pieces. And when it recognizes a for loop, you can have a lexer that says this is a for loop. And so you have the whole structure of the template. And from that point, once you have a lexer, you can put it through some kind of parser and like separate the string portions from the data portions and figure out ways to fill in the data aspects there. Commonly, I've seen is essentially the template gets compiled and then like evaled dynamically into a function. I don't actually know if that kind of runtime evaluation is available in Go. I have no idea if it has those sort of capabilities. Certainly dynamic languages can do this sort of thing. Jinja, if you've ever used Jinja, it does exactly this. It goes through and tokenizes, and with a lexer, it creates the abstract syntax tree out of the actual file, and then it builds a Python function from that and does an eval of it, and then does some essentially dynamic code loading so that you have a function that is ready to accept a bunch of dictionary input and then runs that through this function that's been compiled. So those are different ways that text templating engines work that I've seen. Maybe there are others, but those are at least a couple. So what I'm curious of is is that why there is some naming here? So let's see what they say. We're looking, as a reminder, we're looking at the text template stuff. So this isn't going to be HTML specific, but the API should be similar. So let's go and find, actually let's make this a little bigger so we get sidebar and move this over for a minute. We've got types, nope, functions. Not what I'm looking for either. We're looking for something kind of new, right? Where was that new and why was it a new? Talk to me. New allocates a new undefined template with the given name. Why does the name matter? Is it because we're able to then recall it? What's the name about? Undefined template associated with the given one. Okay. Same delimiters. The association, which is transitive, allows one template to invoke another. Ah. So it does seem like some kind of registry, where by giving it the name, and maybe that answers some of our question about nesting or partials. That's curious. Okay, cool. We'll keep digging into that. And maybe that's all we need to know from the text version of this. Let's go back to the HTML and see what we can get from there. So what goes into parse? If successful, the template object will be injection safe. Otherwise, error. And it's pretty standard. So here we've got, oh, whoa, what is this? They've got a define section. Yeah, all right, we gotta go back to the text one. There's like layers of this that we're missing on what is permissible and not. And there gotta be like keywords or something like that. I want to figure out what's required versus all of that. So templates are executed by applying them to a data structure. Annotations in the template refer to elements of the data structure, typically a field of a struct or a key in a map. Yep, that makes sense. To control execution and derive values to be displayed. Execution of the template walks the structure and sets the cursor, represented by a period and called dot, to the value at the current location in the structure as execution proceeds. I suspect that what this is trying to say, in probably a very precise but also at the same time clumsy way, is that, like, let's say you're in a for loop. Each time through the for loop, the dot would represent the thing that you're looping over at that time, at that iteration. But it just reads in a really clunky way to me. Setting the cursor, like, people have no idea. I would think people have no idea what they're referring to by a cursor there. Not referenced anywhere. Okay, anyway, continuing. The input text for template is UTF-8 encoded text. Actions, data evaluations, or control structures are delimited by double curly braces. Okay, so in other template languages, I've seen those actions be called expressions, which I guess is kind of a synonym. They chose the word actions. All right, cool, good to know. All right, so here we go. This makes sense. This is a pretty good, decent example. So we've got a sweater. Or that's an inventory. Okay, that's, oi. I lied, this is not a good example. They're using plural. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but when I look at code, I see a plural, I immediately think some kind of list-like structure. So to have a singular struct and then give it a plural kind of name is like, what are you doing? but it is an inventory, so that's indicative of a container of multiple things, but abstractly it works, but it just feels not so great in the example. I won't dwell on that though. Let's keep going. So we've got a new template and we parse it and we get another template. What happens? Okay, one thing that we want to check on. I want to check on what happens when you create two templates with the same name. Does one of them error and saying like, or does it just overwrite the other one? I don't know. Maybe there's more explanation later. So actually, let's start our new endpoint here, so we're not just reading docs the whole time. Move our little sticky up here. And actually, let's give some we don't need the navigation. So what should we call this one? Let's do router handle func. This will be a get for template. All right, and then we've got our function, which we'll do like this. And we want to do, just to start, I want to do just write hello. Cannot use untyped string. Why? B. Hello? Can I make a byte array? Will that be happy? What? All right. Well, shoot. Now this is like a stupid question, but sometimes you got to ask the stupid questions, and it's okay. Don't be afraid to. When using IO writer, how do I write a string like hello? Oh, okay. You have to wrap it. Okay, I was close. I was creating it with the wrong syntax. You have to convert it to a byte slice and then write it. Wasn't quite where we wanted it. Okay. So really, this should have been some parentheses. Then it would be happy. So we can go back and run our app, and we can do curl template, and we should see hello. Okay, cool. So we want to get a template in here. We're going to do temple, that's what they conventionally seem to call it. We're going to have an error, and we will, why do you keep doing that? That's so dumb. Come on, go. Colon should not jump all the way back there. It's weird what's happening. And we want to do template, HTML template. That's good. Hold in the right one. New. And we want to call it test, just like they did. And we'll say parse. And we'll give it the same kind of pattern, but we'll use our movie struct that we have, because that's what we're going to pass in. We're going to pass in a movie. So that's going to be double curlies, and then the action. This is where I don't know why they called this an action. Like, what do they had something like, what? Like, why is this called an action? There's no, I guess the dot is an action? Whatever. So we'll do title. So the object we're going to be working from is a movie struct, title, and then we'll do outside of this, we'll do a colon. What the heck? It indented it the other way. So dumb. And then we'll just do release year, just to keep it really simple. And like that. Close it. Okay. And then let's steal Shawshank from up here. Put it down here. So we've got movie. It's gonna be a movie. And we've got to delete that comma. So now we should have a template. I'm going to assume for the moment that the error is nothing. If error not equal to nil, classic Go code pattern, then we would want to do something like byte. Let's see, it broke. I don't know. I don't really care right now. That's our crappy version of error handling. So then we want to call execute. Is that what we want? Because we want to execute on a writer. So is there like a way to work on something that has a writer interface? I guess I actually did want this index thing. Okay, it takes any writer. Oh, I see. So standard out is technically a writer. I got it. Cool. What's the difference between execute and execute template? One of them has a name. Why would you, if you already have a template, if it's already a receive, so this T star template thing tells me it's a receiver method. It's already attached to a template. So why would you need another name here? What's the point? Because this is what I expect. Like we're going to put in the writer from the HTTP response, that writer, and then we're going to pass in the movie as the data. So execute applies a parsed template to a specified data object and writes to the output. If an error occurs, executing the template execution stops, but partial results may have already been written to the writer. All right. A template may be executed safely in parallel. Although if partial executions share a writer, okay, so that's no surprise. Like if you got two things that are running in parallel and they're both writing the standard out, good luck. That's what it's saying. So what's the difference with this one? We've got execute template applies the template associated with T that has the given name, the specified data object, and writes the output to what? Applies the template associated with T that has the given name to the specified data. Oh, is it like naming the data you're about to put in there? Like if you want an alias or something? I don't know why you do that. Because it's like, unless you did want to call it dot. But you're still supposed to access it with dot as like the root thing. If an error occurs, executing the template. All right, let's see if, let's check with ChatGPT again. See if it, what's the difference? Please explain the difference between template execute and execute template. What's up with the name parameter? All right, so far so good. We've got a template. Whoa, template must. That looks interesting. What does it do? Is it going to panic if you don't? Huh. Must. Must is a helper that wraps a call to a function returning template and panics. All right, so it's effectively a way to, if you built the template wrong, it's just gonna blow up. I like that. That saves you a lot of the silliness of this stuff right here. We can do template must, and throw a parenthesis on there. And now it would just like blow up if it didn't work. So it's only gonna run at runtime though? That's what I don't know. Well, it's like, it seems like it's just every time this function gets called, it's gonna create a new template, which does not seem like the way you'd want to build this. Yeah, Dan, I see your comment there. I think that makes sense. I want to see what it can call with an associated template. It's like, aren't you at that point combining a couple templates? So maybe let me continue on and it'll make more sense to me. Sorry, I'm being a little dense, but I get stuck on the must thing. Okay, execute template is used to apply a specific template from a template set to the provided data. But like, don't you already have a template? That's what I don't get. When you have multiple templates defined under a single template object, you want to render one of those templates by its name? What? Oh, maybe it's because, whoa. So you can have the string here. What's up with the backtick syntax? Is that like a raw string? I've not seen that before. Or maybe, I think maybe I have seen that before. It's like a constant, saying a constant string. So then you've got base content. Base going from this one, okay? And then you've got another parse. Oh, it's on the same T. So a template can have more than one section, more than one, like, I guess it comes down to like this define stuff. So because there's a define section, you can call out to a particular define, is how I'm reading this so far. But it's weirdly named, at least in this example, because there's one template called base. So they're mixing up some terms here where they've got base here, but there's also base here, and then they call base here again. So it's like ChatGPT is not doing me any favors there. Okay. Allows you to execute a specific template by name from a set of templates within a template object. So, all right, cool. I guess you can have multiple templates within one template. And perhaps that's how we do, when we get to like nesting and partial, perhaps that's how we do it. It would seem pretty clunky to use it that way, compared to what I think of when I think of other template languages. But perhaps that's what you have to do. Okay, let's carry on. So we've got our template. We know that we can send it to a writer. So we want to do, I think the way we want to do this is we want to say temple execute, and we want to give it the writer, and we want to give it the data, right? And no longer need this line. So from there, I think this should be a working template. Let's try it out. So what we should see is the title of the movie, colon, and then the release year when we call the endpoint. Yep. Neat. Now this is HTML. So maybe we can actually even see this in action. Let's change the title to be The Shawshank Redemption with some silly character less than and greater than surrounding it. And if this is the HTML template, so what we were supposed to get, the benefit we're supposed to get of this is that I would expect this to be converted to ampersand LT semicolon, and this should be ampersand GT semicolon on the other side, and just should automatically happen, I guess. Run that, do it again. Yep, cool. So there's your difference too, I bet. All right, now one last test just to see. Let's call this text. We got the text template version. So this should highlight the difference between the HTML and the text. Is the text one isn't going to do any of this like safe post-processing stuff. So we see the actual less than and greater than characters. So that's cool. Helped me understand why we want to use HTML. Cool. So that's the super basics of templates. I think it's time to expand beyond there. So let's see. Well, they've got maybe some good examples here. Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. Holy goly. Holy moly. All right, so we already complained. I already complained about the sweaters thing. And text and spaces. Okay, you adding a minus sign can get rid of spaces after. I can see. I've seen this in Jinja. Similar concept. I think it's just a minus, or maybe it's a %. I can't remember. But it'll trim off that stuff. There's a bunch of different kinds of actions. Comments. Okay. Pipeline. Huh. Oh, excuse me. All right, so we've got an if and an if-else construct. And if, else if, okay. Range, that's good. Range else. Break, if you're in a range, makes sense. Continue. Oh, cool. All right. So maybe this one looks like how we would do nesting. You can call a different template, or more importantly, not this one with nil data. Most likely, like this is the one we'd probably want most of the time. Although I can see why you'd want some different stuff. And this pipeline thing is confusing, but we saw this earlier where you had. I'm interpreting pipeline is like dot title is a pipeline. So you can do if dot title, then do something. In fact, you might want to do like if dot title, and instead of T1, put in the pipeline of dot title again. If you like only wanted to display the title when it was present in the structure. Which doesn't make sense for a movie. Like, I don't know why you'd create a movie with no title, but you can imagine a scenario where that would be realistic. Okay, so cool. So we could do, in fact, if we wanted to like pass in just a movie, we could have template and then some named thing and then pass in the dot as a way to just pass in that particular movie, if that's the data that we started with, right? Block. Oh, what is this? Wait. Did I miss define? What? Hold on. Why would they do that? Okay, that's annoying. They, in the docs, talk about block. Okay, I guess they haven't gotten to the define keyword yet. All right, fair enough. Well, yeah, they did right here. Define. But they haven't introduced what define is yet. Maybe there's some circular aspects here where they can't. So we'll assume that this is something useful. Block is shorthand for define, name, end, and then executing it in place. Template, name, pipeline. This is typically used to define a set of root templates that are then customized by redefining the blocks within the templates. Okay. Let's try ChatGPT. I think this will be, I have some guesses on how this will come out, where this will actually be pretty natural. Let's form the question that would be useful. Please show an example. I don't know why I said please. Kind to the robot overlords for our future. Please show an example of a base HTML template with a customizable content block and customizable footer block. See what it comes up with. All right, so we've got well, it's not telling us what structure it's passing in. Something with a dot title. So it's assuming we get a struct that has a title in it. And then there's a content block, which is going to receive the same thing that's connected to this dot here. And that's got a heading and a body. Okay. And then you can have, wait. What happens if you don't define the content? If you just have a block, would it just be empty? Or is this how you combine them? So confused. We've got a content template, a footer template. I think they might correspond to the block here. Let's see how that's all wired together. So we've got the base template, which is up here, right? Base template, cool. And then it passes to the same template. This is an interesting construction style where you like keep building into the same thing. It creates a map with an empty interface. It's basically just an empty object. Has a bunch of attributes on it and calls execute template on the base. What is base? Is that the whole thing? Oh, the root. Okay, the root thing is called base maybe. So maybe it's like an implicit, perhaps if you don't put a define inside of it, Is that like implicitly saying that whatever you called it here is almost like wrapping up that whole content in a define? Maybe. Let's read what their explanation says. The templates are parsed and combined using .new. Finally, base is called to render the base template, which includes the custom components. All right. Cool. That seems pretty powerful. So in a lot of like template languages that I've worked with, what you do is you assemble some kind of dictionary, some sort of map, and it's mostly seen. I mostly have seen it called context, which really combats. Go has its own notion of context. You'll see it actually written as CTX. That comes from the context module, which is a whole different concept for doing like cancellation and timer stuff for requests. So they don't really jive, at least in this universe. So they might just call it data, as they called it here. You'd assemble your data that you're going to put into the template, and then maybe a map is probably the best structure, and then you pass along the different pieces. All right. Well, that's all interesting. Let's check out one more thing, because the answer might be no. So, does the template package have any functions for working with templates that are stored in files? That's really what I want to get at. Can you like load it? Because I want to have my, I don't really want to put raw template strings into my code, but maybe there's no ability there. Oh, cool. Parse files. Ooh, there's multiple. Wow. All right. Cool, cool. Now, interesting here. I'm curious. Yeah, single file deployment. That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point, Dan. Because as soon as you have like files that you have to load, now you have multiple things that you have to pass around. Had not considered that. But notice what I didn't. Okay, here's what I didn't see with their example. Maybe this is just Chat GPT like not getting all the details right. So they did parse files here, which is a variadic function apparently. And take multiple file names, but it's still trying to call. Well, it wasn't there. Like when it did parse glob, and then it was talking about how to then execute that, it referred to executing base, right? But we don't have base necessarily defined anymore. Like there's no define in here, right? The whole thing's not wrapped in a define. And maybe we would need to do that in order to make that work. Okay. So that's cool to know. Let's see. So I want to be able to, if you're catching on later, I'm doing all of this research for presenting at a meetup of what's possible if you just use the Go standard library. So what I need to have is enough in here that fits into like a 40-minute talk, doesn't take too long to type, and is something that I can remember. Like I might even be doing this from scratch each time. So it's going to be a lot on my memory. Whoops. So let's try it all here. So if we say base, I want to try it with, well, no, this isn't going to be, never mind, it's not going to be using parse files. Python tutor, welcome. Ironically, I'm not working on Python tonight, but hopefully you learn a little something anyway. We're doing some Go stuff, exploring the standard library, what's possible. So we're going to have, right, Bello. Yes, thank you for the reminder on the name there. So we're going to have like HTML, and let's just do two things. We want to do HTML head title and testing. I'm making a really terrible template right now, apologies. What happens when you make a string like that that's multi-line? Did it give us any examples that? Okay, they did this. They moved it over that way. Yeah, that always bugged me a bit. Okay. So if we want to get this like lined up in a nicer way, we can do this and then end it here and do some stuff here. Okay. Fine. So we'll end it with a head tag there. We'll put in, let's say, a body tag, and this is where we can put the content section. So we want to do define with content, whoops, not context, content, which we would end. And I think we want to put in, oh, no. This was a block, right? Block. So in the base template, we need to say block, which now we know from actually reading that earlier that block is like a shorthand for define followed by the use of the template, I think. That's what it said, right? So we would have a closing body tag, and we would close the HTML. We're not going to render any of this. I guess we could actually. Yeah, let's do that. Before we finish this page or this view, let's see this rendered, because that's going to be important. So then we need, and let's change this stuff to be base, and change the inside here to be base. All right, so then I think we want to pass the dot. We're going to use the pipeline syntax to pass whatever gets put in there as the content. And then we want to have our content template, which we're just going to like render, do the H1 business. H1, the dot should be available, so dot title and the H1 tag, and then a paragraph tag of release date, and that paragraph tag, and that could be our entire content block all the way up to, nope, that's incomplete. So we need to actually define it as a content block. End the definition. All right. So now we've got parse base, and then we want to do temple. They do that must multiple times. It did. Okay. Template must temple parse content. Whoops. Okay. And then we execute that to the writer. Cool. This is pretty gnarly in this file, but as Dan pointed out, you wouldn't have to load multiple files here. So there's something to that. I might still, one thing I would do if it was still doing a single deployment is I would almost certainly put these strings in a different package, or at least a different Go file that then compiles down to a single executable. That's still very sensible. We're loading a lot of stuff in these functions and defining things like right in the nick of time, and that's not what we want. First, let's just see it here. Awesome. That's not quite what I expected. Why did the P tag not have the rest of that? Did I not finish it? What happened? There's definitely, I call it release date? Release year. Aha. But notice, did you see what happened? It was more than just the ending of release year. It's like it, oh, you know what it was? I think what happened is it failed to find the right attribute. And rather than continue rendering, it said, nope, I'm going to stop there because you didn't have the right thing. That's really fascinating. Now we should see the full output. All right, there we go. Let's go over to localhost at 8080, and we'll do template. See, cool, Shawshank Redemption with the weird less than, greater than, and the year. So I think that technique of using block and creating multiple templates and stuff, that's probably how you'd handle like little partials as well. And then what you'd have to get clever about is like lining up the naming. That would be the really tricky part about this, is that you'd have to line up the names exactly right. So the structure that you put in the template would have to be very exact, but you probably want it to be exact anyway. Okay, cool. I like it. Let's see. How are we doing? We're doing coming up on 2 hours, so let's see what else we can explore in a short amount of time before we continue. So we now have explored HTML template rendering. Let's go ahead and add that. That was pretty cool. It looks like it's powerful enough. Looks like there's a whole bunch of stuff that I have not even touched on. Explore HTML template package. See what else we got. Okay. Shoot. Well, static files. Okay. That's interesting. That does get away from the single file deployment, which is unavoidable, but there, you know, apps do need to be able to serve that. So that seems like a really useful one. I think a lot of these other ones, handler func that calls an HTTP deploy. Yeah, I don't want to explore. I think, well, I'll leave these. We might do one more week of this later to get into some of these more esoteric things. Like, can we do compression? You know, like gzip compression from directly within Go? Probably. But this is perhaps the most interesting one to me. Like, if you're gonna be loading file, like if you already, let's say you've gotten over the fact that you're gonna have more than one file. and you want to have some static files to serve, and you don't want to do a reverse proxy set. You don't, well, there's, I mean, a lot of paths to do this, but you don't want to do S3, like upload your images and CSS and JavaScript, whatever you have, to S3. And you also don't want to use something like Nginx as a reverse proxy and have your static assets be run by Nginx. You want to do it all with Go. So static files. How would you do static files? So that might be as simple. Well, maybe not. In my head, before we ask ChatGPT to try and like direct us an answer, in my head, what I'd have is a known directory that's accessible to the binary, like maybe the same current working directory, called static. In fact, we could probably start down that path. So I'd want a directory like right here called static, so that when I run the app, there is a static directory of content. And then I want to say, let's see, we'll just for now say binary. Well, I'm gonna lie. Just call it a text file, and say pretend this is a binary file. Or you know what? Really, no, that's not it. No. Come on. Fine. I'll rename it. So we'll call it static file, and say this is something that wouldn't change. We just want to serve the bytes, right? And this would be like your CSS file or a JavaScript file, like a HTMX or whatever package you'd want to load. And then you'd have a static directory of stuff. And your app is going to run right next to it. And you want to be able to look up into that static directory for a certain path. So the route I was thinking of is something along the lines of I need to be able to accept the route of /static, and then everything after that slash is things that I want to consider as file paths for this directory, and then try and open a file in that directory. If it's not there, do a 404. If it is there, load the content as bytes, and then immediately write it. I don't know how to, like, maybe there's a way to do like do that in one operation with Go. I don't know. So, and then, you know, getting down to like a curl, you can ask us, Rob. So, Dan, the question I'd have on that, you're raising some like interesting points here, and I want to like dig in a little bit. Where would you put the raw bytes? Are you gonna, like, would you have some kind of like part of your Go build process? Is there a way you can say, hey, this particular Go file is a binary? Like, I don't. That's what I'm not tracking on, like how you'd get your raw bytes into the compilation. Maybe there's a technique there that I am unaware of. Other files in your project, would you have it? Still not sure how you build that in the binary. Go CLI imports. Oh, did you send a link? I think it might have blocked a link. So sorry if you shared that, Dan. Certainly not showing it in the chat when I see it. I'm on the top chat. Let me see what I see. Live chat. No, don't see it. Okay. Kachuan, woo, thanks for subscribing. Hopefully you've been learning something here. I'm certainly learning something, and Dan seems to be the actual instructor here. Glad we're learning together. Okay. Go embed binary file. Embed package. Go embed. Oh man, that is cool. Whoa. Whoa. That's really cool. Then how would you, okay, it's still, that's cool. I still don't know how to solve it like generically for this particular example, like a static path. Maybe there's a, you could like, I guess in that scenario, perhaps you could have a map of all the static files that you'd ever want to serve and just have, well, would that work? Maybe I'm not, maybe it would work. Or does all your variables have to be declared ahead of time? Embedded one or more files into a file system. An embedded file. Oh, interesting. Oh, look at that. What the heck? Some next level stuff. You have to build them out. Okay. Content. What? Wildcard. This is wild. This is so cool. Thanks for sharing, Dan. This is awesome. Okay, so we could basically say, it sounds like we could basically say, let's go back to our little app thing here. Whoops. Not the right one. So here in our app, we could do, we would have var f, or no, I don't like that name. Var content, and then we say embed fs. Fs is a read-only collection of files. Holy crap, that's so wild. Safe to use for multiple Go routines simultaneously, and also safe to assign values. Dang, that's cool. Okay, so we would do go embed static star. Is that all that's needed? Okay, go run. It's running. And I assume it slurped all that stuff up. Now, if you have a directory, then you do read file. Well, let's try it. I think you made a comment, Dan, about writing, what to write. Sorry, I'm looking for your comment. You can access raw bytes and return them from us. Would you have to like then, so would you access the raw bytes by doing a content read, you get the data, and then directly call the writer.write? That sounds like the right path. So let's try this. So make a new route. I'm not going to deal with the fact that there might be multiple paths. We could deal with that later. Or I could even do a lookup. Oh, I could see how that could work. You could put together the path yourself from the variadic stuff. So I don't think you'd have to do that with a map. So like if you had a variadic, and what I mean by variadic is like essentially, you know, actually, no, let's not do it there. Let's do it on here. Let's say router. Oh, you've never used the FS before. Okay, cool. Well, maybe we'll learn something new together. So we would do something like get static, and then not just the path. Like I think there's a way. Just gonna slurp up everything. Maybe it will, if I specify the type later when I call the path value thing. Hold on, because there's path value up here, and is it going to respect the slash? That's what I'm wondering. All right, so let's start with one step at a time. Let's do the function, and we want to do, I want to write the fprintf. Can I write this directly? Write the path value of path. Okay, it converted it. My LSP figured it out. It needs to be a byte slice. But let's just see what will happen. So we've got that. So now we run this. And what happens if we do a curl on static and then say something HTML? All right, it writes out something HTML. So I could see us then with our file system stuff that we have, this content thing. We could put together the path with, hold on. We'd have path equal our path value. Oh, I didn't check. Hold on. Before we do that, still running. Let's do something else HTML. Not found. All right, so it was not, it's too many levels when you have multiple slashes, but there might be a way with the router or the mux to get around that. So maybe there's just a way that you have to specify. So let's go to HTTP package and say handle func. Handle func. This is pretty cool. I'm liking this. So I want to learn about the patterns. Where can we learn about the pattern stuff? Pattern. What? Oh, it's on the post-it sticky note. Come on. Pattern. The documentation for serve mux explains how patterns are matched. Okay. Patterns. Path. Is there something that we can specify? Is it the ... Yeah, I think it's the ... Okay. So now let's come back up here and change path to be ... And we'll restart our server and say something else. Okay. Cool. So I can see, like, and hopefully y'all are starting to see this too of how this can work out. So if we have, if we've made it our static directory of files, and we're using Go embed, and we're using this file system thing, which is the coolest thing I've seen all day. I really appreciate the nudge in this direction, Dan. We should be able to conceivably put the path together and then look it up in the file system. And if it doesn't error, then it means we found a valid file. And if it does, it means we didn't and should 404. That's my thinking here. So let's see. We need to use a format string, right, to put this together, to put the path together. We're going to have, let's take all this stuff off now. We'll hold on to the path as a local variable. And we want to, what was the embed? It was read file, right? Read file. And that's our bytes. So we want to do data error. Why does my, I don't know why it keeps forwarding. It doesn't do this to me in my work context. This is super weird on that jump there. Whatever. So we've got content, read. What? It's not even suggesting the right thing. Read file. And then for the moment, I just want to see if this works at all. Which is, so let's forget path. Let's just do static. What did I call that file? Some static file.txt or something like that. Oh, that's why. Okay. We're going to comment this out for a moment, and then we're going to do writer write data. And let's ignore the error for the time being. And let's make sure that that's actually a static file. Static file txt. Okay. So crossing our fingers for a second, this should, in theory, work. Let's stop that, start it up, and then come over here, and it doesn't really matter what we try and do. Awesome. That's so cool. So this is something that wouldn't change. So now to connect the dots for the final, like the final cap on this piece, is to say we have the path, and then we want to change this to be, I can never remember which one of these. Is it sprintf? Returns the resulting string. sprintf. Yeah, I think it's this. And we want to do, instead of this, we want to do %s, and we want to put path here. Okay. So now we've kind of like slurped up whatever the path is. We're looking at our static directory stuff for the files that we expect to be there. And if we start this up, this will have failed. Ooh, this might write a nil. What? I don't know what it's going to write, but it's because we're ignoring our errors, which is bad. Nothing. Okay. So, but if we put this as static file instead, awesome. We get that actual static file out. That is so slick. I wonder, I bet you could even see in the binary file, you could see these bytes. You could probably see it embedded. I bet that'd be cool. Let's try, let's see, go build. So we have a 9 megabyte file out of that because it embedded a whole file system thing there. And I bet if we look at this binary, we can actually search for those bytes, and I bet we'll find it. So this, well, we can search for this is. So we've got this like nasty looking interface here, or file, which is just, we're literally using a text editor to look at bytes, so this is probably not wise. Hey, but there it is. This is something that wouldn't change. So it's embedded right in the binary. That's so cool. All right. So we now have an example with like a tiny, tiny amount of code of how to do static files. And I guess I should comment on why is this cool? It's cool because deployment is a big pain. Deployment of Go is nicer than other stuff because you can see like our process here. We did Go build, and what do we walk away with? We walk away with one file. It's called Go standard app, so it could be named better perhaps, but it's a single file that then we could copy to some server and just say Go standard app. Or I guess I need to do a dot slash here, Go standard app. And it's going to run the server. And the same thing that we had a moment ago, we should be able to curl the same thing and get the content. So that is so powerful as a concept of making it easy to put something on the web somewhere. If we contrast this with a version that I was about to do without knowing about embed, I was going to basically use the actual file system stuff and then have a binary, and on the other hand have a directory of files. And the binary would have to like look in the directory and look for the file matching that, open that file, and then read the bytes out of that file, and then write that. And all of that is probably even slower. I bet it's slower than what we just did as well. So the complexity is maybe performance might be slower. Although I haven't tested that, so take that as for what it's worth. But also you can see that now when we want to deploy to a server, it's no longer one thing. It's now the one thing plus a whole directory of things. So now we've got two things that we have to copy around. And just doing that is enough to make your like deployment process for getting on a server significantly more challenging. And you can imagine like if you took the same process for static files and you had a bunch of other types of files as well, and you had a whole set of things, then you have to create this like bundle of how am I going to deploy it everywhere. But by having a single executable, you just get this one thing to copy around, which I think is that's so cool. And then if you contrast that, let's contrast it with Python. Well, I love Python. I mean, I talk about it frequently, but Python is a much different story when it comes to deployment, and it's much different because not only do I have to deploy my actual like Python source files, because that's what's going to be read and interpreted and run. So there's that aspect. I still have the static files thing, so that didn't go away. I have other kinds of files that I might want to deploy, but most importantly, I'll have all of my like third-party packages. So I like most of the time on the stream, I'm working on a Django app, right? And I don't take the Django code and then like put it into my project and then deploy that. I instead have my application code, I've got my static files, and I've got all of my third-party packages, and they kind of make this trifecta of things that I have to deploy. So it all gets bundled together. Now, thankfully, Heroku, which is the deployment vendor that the platform as a service that I use, makes that pretty like not trivially easy like it would be with this Go stuff here, but it makes it as smooth as it can realistically be. But this is just super slick. So that's pretty cool. All right, so I think that brings us to a good stopping point. We've got static files. Let's see, explore the embed package. Cool. And Dan gets the gold star for the day for the great suggestions. Thank you, Dan. All right, so I think next time, I think we're going to do one more week of this, and then the following week after that is my presentation week. So and it's on a Wednesday, so I will probably be like done with the topic at that point. So we did this, and then I think next time I'm not going to get into the subject of cookies. Let's pass on that one. Also, you know, while this is somewhat interesting, I talked about like maybe you want to do a Go program that proxies another thing, so like calls into some other API. Perhaps you have some like API credentials that you have to protect, but you want to like let people in your company access it, access an endpoint for some reason. That's one use case where I've done a proxy myself in certain contexts. That's cool, and using an HTTP client would be cool to explore, but I don't think we'd really need to dig into it too much. Compression might be kind of cool. It'd be interesting to know if there's like a trivial story for compression, but I don't know that I want to dwell on it too much. So I think what we will probably work on next time is how can you pass along a notion of state, and the kind of canonical example here is like, we're going to imagine that we had some sort of auth system. We're not going to implement a whole auth system. We won't have time for that, but we'll imagine we might like do a map or something of like these are allowed IDs that can log in, and we might do some sort of association with that and stuff that data. So in the apps, I guess I'll leave it with a couple thoughts so you can get a sketch of this in your head. Is you've got this HTTP request pointer, excuse me, and it's going to have a context attribute or a context method attached to it. And from that context, you can like tag a value that you want to put on the context. And it's not recommended that you put a lot of stuff in the context. I think it's actually kind of frowned upon in reality. But we can use a little bit of context to attach something to the request. And we can do that as a very early middleware, as an authentication middleware. And then from there, if we add this authentication middleware to the entire router, we could then do a sub router like we did with down here with what we did with V2, and then take advantage of that context by having like an admin, set of middleware. And the admin middleware, its job would be it would be after the chain of the auth. And so it would inspect the context, look for whatever attribute was set by the auth middleware, and only permit certain requests to go through. And requests that are not allowed would just like halt the chain and would not execute some particular handler function. So I think that's going to be one thing that we'll most likely explore. Maybe we'll camp out on the compression stuff for, I don't know, I probably wouldn't spend more than 10 or 15 minutes on it, saying if it's easy. And then I'd love to, with the last chunk of time, the whole thing that we're missing out of this equation for really making this super powerful is some kind of ability to store data in more than just flat files like CSV or such as that. Ooh, there's an interesting question. Is there the question I have in my head is there a DB driver for a CSV file? Because if you did, I mean, that would still be a crappy writing experience. But if you were trying to make an app that was just reading data and exposing that and making that queryable, that would be pretty cool. I don't know that that's available, but that's what we could explore. So I would potentially open us up to like two things. I'm considering looking at SQLite. The other thing that I've heard about is BoltDB, which is like a native Golang in-memory object store, key value store. I don't know. I'm not sure. I've not read up on it. So I think that would be fun to explore these things because, while it would be cool to just ship with the standard library, it would still be cool to make something useful, and it might be limited on what's considered useful if you can't actually store large amounts of data. So I'm willing to consider like one or two single packages in order to unlock a lot of extra potential there. And I think it would still be kind of in the spirit of, yeah, you can get pretty far, but then if you want to like level up to the next thing, here's how you do that. All right, so that would be kind of the game plan for next time. Hopefully, I learned a ton this evening. hopefully you did as well as we explored the Go standard library. And we'll try it again next week. And then the following week, should be back to doing some Django development. We got a lot left to do on the project we're working on, so we'll do that. If you don't mind, leave me a like or a subscribe or whatever if you thought the content was good, or if you share it in different places, that'd be appreciated too. If you really like the stuff and you want to support me, there's tons of ways you can do that. You can go buy my book at my website if you want to learn about Django. You can support me on Patreon. You can become a member on YouTube here. You can send me a super sticker or whatever. Any way that you feel as support is be greatly appreciated. I pour all of it back into this. Like there's a gigantic new green screen behind me, so it's like money just goes back into here because it's not like this is not my day job, not by a long shot. Anyway, want to say thank you all for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.